Previously in part 1. I was the princess who had everything, until the man I loved crushed my heart in front of the entire court. Adrian returned from war not to marry me, but to break me. Desperate to escape the palace's suffocating pity, I threw my lot in with Julian, a dangerous rogue with a lethal smile. We've survived gambling dens and deadly plots, but the real danger is just beginning. Why did Adrian truly betray me? And who is the man behind the rogue's mask? When people have too much time on their hands, their favorite pastime becomes gossip. Lately, the talk of the capital has centered on two topics. Even though I rarely leave the Princess Manor, rumors have drifted in like fallen leaves, impossible to ignore. First, General Adrian Yang has fallen gravely ill and remains in recuperation at home. He has refused all visitors, sending shockwaves of speculation through the court and beyond. Though I had resolved to cut ties with him, we were still childhood friends. I couldn't simply turn a blind eye. I instructed Ivy to prepare a modest gift and had it delivered to the Yang Manor. Second, the heir of Prince Rui was caught cockfighting, defying his father's orders. Furious, Prince Rui had no choice but to resort to family discipline. The heir is now in confinement. Knowing Julian Y's free-spirited nature, being confined must be torture for him. The carriage stopped at Rui Manor, and I stepped down with Ivy's help. The early autumn wind already carried a chill that seeped through my clothes. I pulled my thin cloak a little tighter. The plaque above Rui Manor's main gate, personally inscribed by my father, the Emperor, was an extravagant sight. The stone lions guarding the entrance were carved with majestic, lifelike detail. I had sent word of my visit ahead of time, so a young servant was already waiting. He spotted my arrival and led me toward the rear courtyard. As I entered, I saw Princess Rui seated languidly in the seat of honor. She wore an orchid-purple gown, an ornate ruby hairpin depicting the twin immortals of harmony dangling at her temple. Her features were serene, and her every expression gave her the air of a celestial beauty. She rarely attended palace banquets, so this was my first time meeting her. I couldn't help but marvel. No wonder Prince Rui was devoted to her and her alone. She was truly extraordinary. Julian must have inherited his looks from his mother. His alluring phoenix eyes seemed to be cast from the very same mold. Chloe Gu sat in a seat just below Princess Rui and gave me a slight nod. Princess Rui rose slowly and took my hand affectionately. "I've heard so much about you, Princess Isabella, but this is the first time we've met. Come, sit." "Speak of the devil," Chloe Gu said, covering her mouth to hide a smile. "This just goes to show, you can't talk about people behind their backs." Princess Rui smiled. "Chloe was just telling me to keep an eye out for any worthy young men for you." Seeing the teasing looks on their faces, I could only manage a startled, "Ah?" Not knowing what else to do, I simply lowered my head bashfully. "What a coincidence that you both came to see Julian today," Princess Rui said, touching her hairpin. She instructed a nearby maid, "Go and call the heir over." "Yes," the young girl replied respectfully and withdrew. "Oh, by the way, the prince brought back a few jugs of Beauty's Kiss wine, a tribute from the western regions. You should try some." Princess Rui was an expert at reading people. Seeing my hesitation, she added, "Don't worry, Isabella. This wine is sweet and delicious. You can't taste the alcohol at all. It's more like grape juice." The small, cream-white porcelain cups were filled with a deep purple liquid, creating a stark contrast. I took a small sip. Just as Princess Rui had said, there was no trace of alcohol, only a rich, fragrant aroma. "Mother, you were looking for me." His voice arrived before he did. Julian Y came around a screen embroidered with the four gentlemen: plum, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum. He wore a sky-blue brocade robe, his hair half down. He had clearly come in a hurry. A thin layer of sweat beaded on his forehead. "Bella, what are you doing here?" His eyes lit up as he walked straight toward me. Seeing this, Chloe Gu feigned jealousy. "Hey, cousin, you only have eyes for Bella. Don't you see me sitting right here?" "How heartbreaking," she sighed, blinking and touching her forehead dramatically. "You jest, Cousin Chloe," Julian said, stopping just short of me and taking a seat on a nearby stool. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, a stone lifting from my heart. For a moment I was afraid he would rush right over without a second thought. "Well, Isabella and Chloe are here to see you." Princess Rui suddenly spoke up, her gaze shifting between Julian and me. After a moment, as if she understood everything, she said, "I'm a bit tired. Julian, why don't you take Isabella and Chloe for a walk around the manor?" "Of course. Cousin, something urgent has come up at home. I have to go." The moment we stepped outside, Chloe spoke up. Before I could say a word, she swept away with her maid, disappearing like a gust of wind. "Hey, don't go." All I could do was watch as she turned down the long corridor, past the pavilion, and vanished from sight. I walked behind Julian, and for a moment we were silent. "Are you feeling better?" "Much better." He stopped abruptly without warning. I bumped right into his back, the impact making my nose ache. Julian turned around and gently rubbed the tip of my nose. "Why are you so careless?" he asked, his voice full of helpless affection. He crouched down to my eye level. "Bella, you're so silly. What am I going to do with you?" "Julian, way," he called me silly. I gritted my teeth, brushed his hand away, and stomped ahead. "You have never once treated me like a princess." I plopped down on a stone bench in the pavilion. In autumn, the garden flowers had withered, all except for the chrysanthemums, which bloomed vibrantly, a testament to the line, "After my blossoms bloom, all others are slain." "Are you angry?" "Isn't it obvious?" I retorted. "Then come a little closer, and I'll tell you why." I scooted over. "Fine. Tell me." "Because," he suddenly leaned in, his left arm wrapped around my waist, his right hand lifted my chin, and his cool lips pressed against mine, again and again. A long time passed before he reluctantly let go. "Because I don't see you as a princess," he answered seriously. "I see you as Bella, my one and only Bella." The validation I had craved from Adrian Yang, Julian had given me freely. For a moment, I didn't know how to react. Smooth talker, scoundrel, ruffian. My face flushed crimson, but my heart fluttered in a way it never had before. Julian just shrugged with an air of reckless abandon, as if to say what you will. I don't know what came over me, but I gathered my courage, cornered him against the stone table, and quickly kissed the corner of his lips. "Now we're even." Unexpectedly, this time it was Julian who blushed. A deep red spread from his neck to his earlobes. He deliberately avoided my gaze, not daring to meet my eyes. I tapped the stone table, making a dull thud. "And here, I thought you were so bold. Turns out you're not so tough after all." Since Julian Y was confined to his home, he began sending me all sorts of curious and wonderful gifts every few days. A few days ago, it was a half-grown kitten, black and white with round, emerald-green eyes. It often napped at my feet, purring so loudly that nothing could wake it. Today, he sent a small wooden box. Chloe Gu sat beside me, her eyes glued to my hands. "I knew it. There's definitely something going on between you two." She grabbed my wrist, determined to get to the bottom of it. "Tell me, how far have you gone?" "Please, Chloe, don't make this hard for me." Sigh. "And here I was, working so hard to find someone worthy of you, and it turns out you found someone you like all on your own." Chloe looked away, then stole a couple of glances at me and sighed dramatically. Sigh. "All right, I'll tell you," I said, grabbing her sleeve. I leaned in close to her ear and whispered, "We only just admitted our feelings for each other. It happened last time, when I visited Rui Manor." Chloe nodded with a knowing look. "Then my efforts to give you two some time alone weren't in vain." You knew all along?" Chloe pursed her lips and lifted her chin proudly. "Sometimes, an outsider sees things more clearly." "Hurry up and open the box," she urged when she saw me hesitating. When I opened the box, the first thing I saw was a piece of yellow paper folded in three, the ink having bled faintly through to the back. Underneath was a piece of crimson brocade embroidered with a lotus pattern. The handwriting on the paper was bold and flamboyant. "Bella, I write this letter as if I were speaking to you myself. Yesterday I heard from the maids that there's a custom among the common folk. When a man takes a fancy to a woman, he gives her a hairpin or a jade bracelet. The woman then embroiders a pouch for him as a token in return." I looked under the paper and, sure enough, wrapped in the brocade was a gold hairpin and a jade bracelet. The gold hairpin was crafted from filigree wire, depicting 100 butterflies flitting through flowers. They were small and exquisite, as if about to take flight, their eyes dotted with tiny flecks of red coral. The bracelet was carved from mutton-fat white jade, so pure it was translucent. It was warm to the touch, its luster and color of the highest quality. I didn't expect my cousin to be so good at winning a woman's heart. Chloe adopted the sagely air of a proud mentor, nodding her head. He was obviously asking me to embroider a pouch for him. Although the letter didn't state it outright, his meaning was perfectly clear. Then, as if remembering something, Chloe suddenly asked, "Have you been to see Adrian Yang? He's quite ill, you know." "No, I only sent a gift." "That's for the best. You and he should go your separate ways now. Don't meddle in each other's lives." After seeing Chloe out of the Princess Manor, I sat alone in my room, staring blankly at the wooden box. The red brocade cast a warm, pinkish glow on everything around it. What should I embroider? Perhaps the safest choice would be cherry blossoms. Winter arrived in the capital, and in the blink of an eye, another year had passed. I still remember this time last year. I was filled with joy, waiting for Adrian Yang to return and marry me. I never imagined that in just 1 year, everything would change. After Julian received the pouch, he scrambled to write a note and sent it with a messenger. It read, "I will treasure this dearly and keep it with me always." I once made a pouch for Adrian Yang, too, but he cast it aside like an old shoe. One man despised it, the other cherished it completely. To be treated so differently. It felt surreal. Matrons Shen and Ivy were already bustling about, buying supplies for the new year. Auspicious couplets were pasted on the gates of the Princess Manor, and the windows were decorated with all sorts of intricate paper cuts. I woke up one morning to find the red plum blossoms in the small courtyard, which had braved the frost, were now in full bloom. A heavy snow had bent their branches to the ground, and the drifts before my door were several feet deep. I pushed open the door and took a deep breath. The air smelled of clean, vast whiteness. A few days before New Year's Eve, the Emperor decided to hold a hunt at the imperial hunting grounds on the outskirts of the capital. Usually, only men participated in such events. But this year, our dynasty had defeated the wrong tribe in the west, forcing them to retreat 50 miles. The Emperor was so pleased that he permitted women to join. For the women of the court and the daughters of noble families, it was their first time at the hunting grounds. They were curious about everything. When a squirrel leaped down from a tree, they all gathered around to tease it, scaring the furry little thing so much that it scurried away, leaping from branch to branch. The Emperor gave a few instructions in front of the wooden lodges, but I didn't hear a single word. My mind had already drifted off, my eyes scanning the crowd for Julian. "Bella." I felt a light tap on my shoulder and spun around. Julian was once again dressed in a dazzling, fiery red. The color didn't look gaudy on him. Instead, it lent him a bright, youthful charm. The white rabbit fur collar made his skin look even fairer. He blinked, declaring confidently, "I'm definitely taking first place this year." Julian took my hand and led me to choose a horse. As we passed one of the lodges, I caught sight of Adrian Yang sitting there quietly. He looked much better, but his face was still pale. He was wrapped in a thick, heavy cloak, with only half his face showing. "Bella, this little red horse is perfect for you," Julian said, pointing to a gentle, reddish-brown horse in the stable before reaching out to stroke its head. "As for me, I'll take this one." His gaze shifted to a black steed nearby. Its coat was sleek and glossy, and it exhaled puffs of hot air from its nostrils. A magnificent animal. After we selected our horses, I tied up the hem of my skirt, placed my foot in the stirrup, and swung myself onto the little red horse. Once seated, I untied the ribbon holding the fabric and smoothed out my skirt. It had been a long time since I'd last ridden a horse. I wondered if I'd gotten rusty. "Julian, how about a race?" I raised an eyebrow, a challenge in my eyes as they curved into crescents. "A race it is." He rode his horse alongside mine and said in a low voice, meant only for me, "If I win, Bella must promise to be my wife." I froze for a moment, then looked him straight in the eye. "Julian," I said slowly, "you must know that if you marry me, your political career will be over. Are you truly willing to accept that?" Seeing my serious expression, he suddenly laughed. Then, under the cover of his sleeve, he took my hand and gently caressed it. "I thought you understood." "Understood what?" "That's why I took you to the cockfighting ring on Golden Street, to make you understand. Bella, I, Julian have no great ambitions. I'm not interested in a political career, so you don't need to feel any guilt. This is my own choice." In the northwest corner of the hunting grounds stood a 100-year-old pine tree. We agreed that whoever reached it first would be the winner. I took the lead right away. Looking back at Julian Y with a mischievous glint in my eye, I mouthed silently, "I'm going to win." Julian Y raised an eyebrow. "We'll see about that." I nudged the horse's belly with my heels and flicked its rump with my small whip. The little red horse startled and galloped even faster. Its hooves crunched on the thick snow, a rhythmic squeaking sound. Before long, we'd left everyone else behind. Occasionally, a few small deer would dart through the woods, searching for food. I took a deep breath, and a white mist blurred my vision. A regular thudding of hooves sounded from behind. I turned to see Julian, who had been lagging behind, now right on my heels, his dark hair flying in the wind. I was about to smile at him when his expression changed. All the color drained from his face. "Look out!" But it was too late. The little red horse's front hooves snagged a tripwire. A sensation of falling enveloped me, and the world turned upside down. The moment I hit the ground, one thought filled my mind. I'm going to be sick. A sharp stone had cut a large gash in my arm, and blood gushed out, staining my sleeve red. But my body hadn't slammed into hard rock as I'd expected. Instead, the impact felt soft. "Aww." A sharp intake of breath. Then a weak voice asked, "Bella, are you all right?" "I'm fine." I ignored the pain in my arm and helped him up, brushing the stray hairs from his forehead. "Julian, you big fool. Are you trying to get yourself killed? Dashing over from so far away?" He didn't answer. He gently tucked a strand of hair from my cheek behind my ear, then buried his face in the crook of my neck, his arms clamping tightly around my waist. "I was afraid something would happen to you," he murmured. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. See? Perfectly fine," he said, holding his arms out to show me he wasn't hurt. Now one horse was injured and the other had run off. Our only hope was that someone would soon notice we were missing. Julian put his arm around my waist and sighed. "Good thing there are no ferocious beasts in these hunting grounds. Otherwise, we'd both be dead." We supported each other as we trudged through the deep snow. When we grew tired, we rested. Julian leaned on my shoulder, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "Julian, I'll marry you." He didn't answer. "Julian?" Still no response. "Julian Way." I reached inside his heavy cloak, my hand searching for his waist, only to come away wet and sticky with blood. I was such a fool. How could he possibly be fine after an impact like that? I used all my strength to pull him up, draping his left arm over my shoulders and wrapping my right arm around his waist to help him walk. But I had overestimated my own strength. Julian was a grown man after all. We stumbled and fell countless times. When I reached up to touch his forehead, it was terrifyingly hot. If he didn't get medical attention soon, I didn't dare think about what would happen. A rustling sound came from nearby. I looked up sharply. A ray of hope. "Bella!" Adrian Yang leaped down from his horse, his cheeks flushed with urgency, fine beads of sweat on his forehead. I clutched his sleeve, my brow furrowed. "Quick! Save him! Save Julian!" He helped me to my feet but said nothing. The guards with him didn't dare move without his command. I grew frantic. "I'm begging you, save him." "All right." He suddenly reached out, as if to brush the snow from my hair. I instinctively recoiled. His voice sounded faint and distant, as if from another world. "Don't worry, I'll save him." The guards received his order and hurried to help Julian, who was slumped against a tree. I nodded at Adrian and said coolly, "Thank you." I was about to turn and check on Julian, but Adrian grabbed my sleeve. His expression was rigid as he pulled me by the wrist, his grip so tight it hurt. He led me toward his horse. "You're coming back with me." "What are you doing?" A stiff, angry smile stretched across his lips. "You value his life so much, but what about your arm? Are you just going to let it be?" I pulled my hand free and turned away. "I'll ride back myself." His expression suddenly softened, and he pleaded gently, "Bella, listen to me. Don't be stubborn. My arm can wait." He can't. Left with no choice, I had to agree to ride with him. By the time we reached the villa near the hunting grounds, evening had fallen. Grayish-white clouds clustered in dense layers like mountain ranges. It looked as if another heavy snow was on its way. The imperial physician who had accompanied the hunting party rushed into the room to treat Julian. I helped remove his heavy cloak, and only then did I see the true extent of the injury on his back. Blood had glued his clothes to his skin. The gash was deep, the torn flesh around it pale and bloodless. His entire back was a horrifying sight. With a trembling hand, I used a small knife sterilized by fire to cut away the fabric stuck to the wound. Julian unconsciously frowned, his breathing hitching for a moment. The physician stroked his beard, his brow furrowed as he used a small knife to carefully debride the wound, cutting away the dead flesh. He ordered a young attendant to fetch wound powder from the medicine chest and sprinkle it evenly over the injury before wrapping it in layer after layer of gauze. "Princess, the wound has been treated, but the most urgent task now is to bring the young lord's fever down." "I understand." After seeing the physician out, I ordered Ivy to fetch several basins of cold well water. I placed one beside Julian and left the others in a snowbank outside to keep them chilled for rotation. I soaked a cloth in the water and placed it on his forehead, then wiped his neck and chest. After repeating this dozens of times, I touched his skin again. It was no longer as scorching as before. Once his temperature stabilized, I switched to lukewarm water. "Thank heavens." Ivy frowned and stammered. "Your Highness, let me tend to your arm." I nodded. After she applied medicine and wrapped it in gauze, she hesitated, then stammered for a long while before finally blurting out, "Your Highness, General Yang has been waiting outside for 2 hours. You." The sky outside had turned completely dark. As I lifted the windswept curtain, a cold gust of wind rushed in. Adrian Yang was standing in the snow, his shoulders covered in a fresh layer of white. "Thank you for today. It was the least I could do." His eyes glanced at my left arm. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. It's just a minor injury." I pushed the hand warmer I was holding into his hands. "It's so cold, you should go back." He acted as if he hadn't heard me. Staring into my eyes, he suddenly let out a soft laugh. I had never seen him laugh like that before. For a moment, it was as if the snow itself had melted. "Bella, thank you. Thank you for not being so cold to me," was what he left unsaid. I didn't understand why he was thanking me, but I had no energy left to guess. The incident had far-reaching implications. How could a tripwire appear in the Imperial hunting grounds for no reason? The Emperor followed the clues and uncovered a string of traitors. The ringleader was a remnant of the previous dynasty, who had lived under a false name for decades, with the sole aim of assassinating the royal family, dreaming of restoring his fallen regime. Unfortunately for him, his dreams shattered, and his efforts came to nothing. After Julian Wei woke up, he was moved back to Rue Manor. I visited him often. Ever since the incident at the hunting grounds, he always wanted me by his side. I'd never thought of him as clingy before, but now he acted more like a child. On the day of the Lantern Festival, he requested a marriage decree from the Emperor. The Emperor agreed readily. It made sense. Prince Rui's power and achievements were a threat to the throne. His family was one of the most powerful outside the royal bloodline, and the Emperor had been looking for a reason to suppress them. Naturally, he wouldn't refuse an opportunity that fell right into his lap. Stifling his son-in-law's political future would be more than enough. A noble house with no prospects could never pose a real threat. The 19th day of the 3rd month was an auspicious day, perfect for a wedding. The date was set. With so little time, I couldn't possibly embroider my own wedding dress. The Princess Manor hired more than a dozen of the most skilled seamstresses to sew my gown and veil. All I had to do was add the final few stitches for it to count as my own handiwork. On the 2nd day of the 2nd month, Rui Manor sent people to deliver the betrothal gifts. They were carried into the Princess Manor on poles in a seemingly endless stream. Matron Shen was grinning from ear to ear, but I soon realized something was wrong. There were far too many gifts. The front courtyard of the Princess Manor was filled with chests covered in red silk, but they were divided into 2 separate sides. I saw the guard from Fred's restaurant, the one who was always with Adrian Yang. He bowed respectfully, his fists clasped. "My congratulations, Princess. These gifts are from the General." His gaze swept over the row of gifts on the left. "Take them back." The guard lowered his head again. "The General asks that you accept them, no matter what." "Where is Adrian Yang?" "The situation at the northern frontier is critical. The General is already 100 miles from the city." The guard took a letter from his pocket and handed it to me. "The General left this for you." I tore open the envelope. The paper inside held only 16 characters, written in a neat script. May your life be filled with peace and joy, free from hardship and misfortune. May you and your husband live in harmony, blessed with many children and grandchildren. Perhaps there was no better wish in all the world. This subordinate will now take his leave. The guard left in a hurry. Ivy was at a loss. Your Highness, what should we do with them? Tell the stewards to make an inventory and put them in storage. The next day, Ivy returned. Your Highness, the stewards have finished the list. It even includes the ice flower hibiscus jade and the chicken blood plum blossom glass beads you once mentioned. But what? But there's an extra jade bracelet. I think it must be part of a pair, but there's only one here. Would you like to see it, Your Highness? Ivy asked, holding out the list and the bracelet. Never mind, since it's all been catalogued, just put the list away, I said, trimming a stray branch from the flowers in a vase, paying it no mind. The wedding day was incredibly lively. I was woken up before dawn, and a lady of good fortune began to comb my hair. This lady of good fortune was the old princess of Heng Manor. All her close relatives were living, and she had both sons and daughters, a truly blessed woman. The first combing, together till the end. The second combing, together till your hair is white. The third combing, your home filled with children and grandchildren. The fourth combing, your life filled with wealth and good fortune. An attendant helped me from the room, placing a red silk ribbon in my hand. My gaze followed it to the other end, where his fair hand held it, and a sense of calm washed over me. The sedan chair followed a long, winding route through the city before finally stopping before Rui Manor. Julian Wei lifted the curtain and took my hand. Bella, he said, we're here. Firecrackers popped and crackled at the entrance, and the air buzzed with the congratulations and well wishes of the guests. We stepped over the brazier and entered the main hall. My father, the Emperor, was seated in the place of honor, with Prince Rui and Princess Rui on either side. First, bow to heaven and earth, I turned and bowed. Second, bowed to the elders. My father and the others murmured their approval. Now, bowed to each other. Julian Y and I faced each other and slowly bowed. I could faintly hear his soft chuckle, and then my ears filled with the boisterous chatter and teasing of the guests. Escort them to the bridal chamber. The ceremony is complete. I was ushered into a room that was a sea of red. Peanuts, longans, and other dried fruits were scattered over the brocade quilt on the bed, symbols of good fortune and the hope for a son to be born soon. A wine pot and cups sat on the table. I sat quietly on a stool and waited. Creak. The door opened. The soft footsteps seemed to echo in my own chest. My heart began to pound like a drum, and a sudden wave of nervousness washed over me. Julian Wei slowly lifted my veil. Our eyes met. Bella, he said, I'm so happy. Why are you back so soon? I avoided his gaze, not daring to look him in the eye. I could feel my ears burning. I haven't seen you in 2 months. His expression turned into a playful pout. I need to make up for lost time. After we drank the wedding wine, Julian's gaze turned intense. Bella. We shared a night of passion, the crimson quilt tossing like waves. The days that followed were leisurely except for, well, let's not mention that. Julian Y and I sat across from each other, playing a game of Go. I held the white stones, and he held the black. Ivy rushed in. Princess, an urgent report has arrived from the northern frontier. General Yang has fallen in battle. I froze. The white stone in my hand never made it to the board. Bella. Julian took my hand. I smiled at him. It's nothing, just a pity, that's all. In this vast world, all living things burn so brightly and so briefly. It would be nice to be a little bird. In my next life, I only want to fly high. Adrian Yang's mind drifted back to the first time he met the princess. It was a warm day. In the imperial garden, peach blossoms hung in dense clusters. A kite with a broken string drifted down and landed beside him. He still hadn't memorized the lesson his tutor had assigned. Burying his face in his hands, he let out a long sigh. The sound of light footsteps caught his attention. It was a little girl. Her butter-yellow dress was like a blooming caria flower, as vibrant as a fresh spring branch. She seemed so delicate that a single touch might leave your finger damp with morning dew. That's my kite, the little girl explained timidly. In her clear eyes, he saw his own reflection. He felt a flicker of irritation. With a cold expression, he thrust the kite into her hands. But in his heart, he couldn't help but think of the poem he'd been memorizing that day. For some reason, he felt he was beginning to understand it. After that, the little girl often found excuses to be near him. Adrian Yang had been taught from a young age never to blindly trust someone who was inexplicably kind to him. He was like a hedgehog, raising his quills to reject all of her kindness. But without realizing it, he was slowly won over, little by little, revealing his soft underbelly, exposing his vulnerability. He was often cold to the little girl, his face expressionless. He hardly ever said more than a few polite words to her. But when, for some reason, she failed to wait for him at the Imperial Academy, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. That day, the fiery clouds in the sky were a brilliant spectacle, like dyes spilled by a celestial maiden. He stood in a corner, waiting and waiting, until the sky grew dark. But she never came. He couldn't hide the dejection on his face. The little girl would excitedly share interesting stories from the palace with him. She even gave him an embroidered pouch she had made. He didn't know what possessed him at the time, but because he'd heard someone say she'd spoken a few extra words with the censor's young son, he casually tossed it away. That night, he lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Finally, with a sigh, he crept out into the darkness and searched through the grass. It took a great deal of effort, but he found the pouch. From then on, he kept it tucked against his chest, close to his heart, never letting it leave his side for a moment. The next time he went to the palace, his aunt, Consort Yang, was busy looking through potential matches for him from the noble families of the capital. He glanced through a few pages before tossing the booklet aside and casually mentioning Princess Isabella. She earnestly advised him. "Bella is a good girl, Adrian, but she is not a suitable match for you. You must shoulder the future of the Yang family. Aunt, she is the only one I want." It was the first time he had ever argued with the aunt he was closest to. The little girl assumed it was because her late mother and Consort Yang had been close friends. She never suspected that he had been the one pulling the strings. Word of the imperial decree announcing their engagement spread through the palace halls and across the entire capital. Everyone knew that Princess Isabella was betrothed to Adrian Yang of the Yang family. All they had to do now was wait for her coming-of-age ceremony. He imagined a future with the little girl, a life of quiet harmony. They would be an enviable couple, like lovers from the heavens. But he never expected the war on the northern frontier to become so critical. He didn't even have a chance to properly say goodbye to the little girl. The landscape of the northern frontier was a world away from the capital. He promised himself that one day he would take the little girl traveling. They would see the gray tiles and white walls of picturesque Jiangnan. Then they'd come here to the northern frontier to experience the vast yellow sands and the moon over Duguan Pass. The northern frontier had spring peach blossoms too. They bloomed just as beautifully, their fragrance bold and unrestrained. But the war dragged on with little progress, and he was determined to win a swift victory. He wanted to return to the capital sooner, to pick up the pair of jade bracelets he had commissioned from Master Fang. He wanted to attend the little girl's coming-of-age ceremony in person and give her the gift with his own hands. And so, a war that was supposed to last 6 months, he ruthlessly shortened to 4. The desert winds were harsh, and with the arrival of winter, life became even more difficult. A blizzard blinded them. During the final, decisive battle, they were trapped in an enemy encirclement. A stray arrow, its tip dipped in poison, found its mark. The feathered shaft tore through the air and embedded itself in his chest. In that instant, his heart pounded like a drum. His mind raced. What if we lose this battle? What if I can't return to the capital? And what about the little girl? The wind drove snowflakes into his eyes. By the time reinforcements arrived, his face was already ghastly pale. It was hard to tell which was whiter, his face or the snow. He had a very long dream. In his dream, he saw Princess Isabella marrying him. The red silk cast a rosy blush on her cheeks. She wore a vibrant red wedding gown, her golden hairpins and ornaments swaying. On her wrist was the jade bracelet he had given her, chiming with every lift of her hand. Outside the dream, an old army physician of great skill used every means at his disposal and managed to save his life. General, you must prepare yourself. Your constitution has been severely damaged. You will need to take medicine on schedule every day, and, I'm afraid, you won't last for more than a few years. I understand. His calm, unwavering reply came only after a long silence. How long does it take for a heart full of hope to be shattered in an instant? He braved the heavy snow to rush back to the capital, and finally made it in time for the little girl's coming-of-age ceremony. The first thing he did upon his return was to publicly break off their engagement. Tongues wagged across the capital, but he didn't care. He only cared when he saw the flicker of astonishment on her face. In that moment, he felt like a coward and wanted to run. The snow that day was incredibly heavy, the kind you might see only once in a century. Snowflakes fell softly, blanketing his shoulders and hair. A few even landed on his eyelashes, and when they melted, it was impossible to tell if it was from the snow or from tears. No one knew how long he stood there in the snow, watching as the woman he loved lost her spirit, and then, step by step, walked toward another. He still couldn't let go. Chloe Gu was close to the princess, so he was sure the little girl would attend her birthday celebration. He selfishly thought that just one glance would be enough. He thought his pretense was flawless, but in reality, it was clumsy and pathetic. He was often alone. He wouldn't speak, just sit there in a daze. In the storehouse, treasures lay gathering dust. He had chosen each one with her in mind, gathering them one by one as her betrothal gifts. But now, they would never be used. She had fallen for someone else. Her worry when Julian Y was injured had been genuine. That expression had once been for him alone, but now it had nothing to do with him. On the day of the Lantern Festival, the Emperor bestowed marriage upon the little girl, betrothing her to none other than the heir of Prince Rui. On the second day of the second month, he departed from the capital once again, heading back to the northern frontier. The betrothal gifts became wedding presents. At least they served some purpose. To ensure she wouldn't refuse them, he even left a letter. He wrote and rewrote the 16-character blessing several times. Spring on the northern frontier is very short. Peach blossoms covered the mountains, and a hazy crescent moon hung in the sky. I once thought I would bring her to the northern frontier to see the endless yellow sands, the moon over Duguan Pass, or the brilliant spring peach blossoms. But I'll never have the chance. In the future, someone else will be with her. Whether they go to Jiangnan or come to the northern frontier, it doesn't matter where. His guard, Aaron, asked if he had any regrets. He picked up a peach blossom and gently stroked its petals. Regrets? I have no regrets. Even if I could choose again, I would do the same thing. He sighed softly and raised his head to look at the moon in the sky. He said, Aaron, look, the moon waxes and wanes. People, too, experience joy and sorrow, meetings and partings. There's nothing to regret. But the momentary twitch of his lips and the hand that tightened until the veins stood out betrayed him. He changed the subject, suddenly asking, What about the things I asked you to retrieve from Master Fang? After he broke off the engagement, he never went back for the jade bracelets. Aaron took out a small wooden box and knelt to beg for forgiveness. Forgive me, General. I selfishly left one of the bracelets at the Princess Manor. He wanted the princess to know the General's true feelings. Forget it. She won't look at it anyway. It doesn't matter anymore. He took the box and removed the other bracelet. After a long silence, he did something shocking. He slipped it onto his own wrist. The smoky pink jade bracelet was translucent and flawless. It glinted coldly in the moonlight. He suddenly laughed. It's beautiful. The bracelet is beautiful, and so is the moon. It's just that, the one I long for is far away. And now I look to the moon, but it is not you I see.